back okay? Awesome. Well, my name is Hope McCutcheon, and I'm one of the hosts for today's event. Let me see your hands if this is your first time attending CE2. Awesome. Well, so glad to have you. Welcome. We would always love to hear how you heard about the event. You could tell myself or Sarah at the back table just how you heard of it, and we'll do more of that. And we'd love to have you keep coming back. But CE2, Charlottesville Entrepreneurs in Espresso, actually started back in 2015. So 9 years. We are proud to say we kept rolling through the pandemic. We only missed one very obvious month in 2020. Is that what it was? I don't remember. We've moved on. And anyways, this event is put on by a number of organizations. They're all right here, perfect timing. But the Community Investment Collaborative, the Central Virginia Small Business Development Center, the Charlottesville Business Innovation Council, those are 3 organizations that come together. And then we also have some sponsors and co-hosts like Co-Based Co-working, which we're very grateful for. This space, the utilization of this space, and then Watermark Design and the Batten Institute at UVA. I think I covered everyone. But how this event is structured is we have 2 speakers every month. We have an early stage company that's going to share about their company, and then they're going to have an ask for the audience. So there's a chance for you to participate and help them solve a barrier to growth, which is very engaging. You know, we'll hand you a mic and have you share. And then after that, we have a seasoned entrepreneur that's actually going to share their crash and learn stories. So lessons they've learned the hard way on their entrepreneurial journey. So sound good? Great. All right, so we can go ahead and jump in with our first speaker. Again, perfect timing here. Maximilian Martin and Adam Durant are going to share about MingleMoney. As they're coming up, just a little bit of their background. Maximilian grew up in Germany. Family moved to Richmond, and so that's where he was after that. He went to Columbia University, got his BA in poli-sci and government, worked for Accenture for about 5 years in cybersecurity, finance, and risk management, and then went to Darden and just finished at Darden. And then Adam went to Florida International University in mechanical engineering. He did engineering between, well, I haven't told you what he did next, but he also got his MBA. So between those 2, Huntington Ingalls Industries, and then went to Darden. And these 2 met at Darden and just graduated and started a company immediately after. So this is what they do. And really excited to have them share about MingleMoney and get your help in their continued growth. So help me bring up Maximilian and Adam.
Hello. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Maximilian. This is Alex. We are part of the MingleMoney team. In a nutshell, MingleMoney is a peer-to-peer micro-lending marketplace where we connect borrowers and lenders and facilitate the loan process. So the story of MingleMoney started around, I'm going to say 8 months ago now, where essentially I was talking to a number of my MBA classmates. There was a lot of talk going on about student loans, lines of credit being taken out, and interest rates and terms that really just weren't working for anybody. So I wanted to investigate. I didn't really know a lot about the space at the time, but I knew that this was something that was potentially interesting to me, and I was curious. So after talking to a number of these classmates, I was like, what if I were to look into lending itself and figure out what some of the best use cases so far have been and where we could potentially fit in this market? But before I go into that, let me just introduce you to the team. So as mentioned before, I am Maximilian Martin, CEO and founder of MingleMoney. Prior to starting MingleMoney and coming to Darden, I was a management consultant at Accenture. My co-founder, sister, and CTO is Joe Martin, so it's a family business. Joe graduated from the Naval Academy with a degree in computer science and cyber warfare. And then post the Naval Academy, she started working at Amazon as a developer. Also on the team is one of my best friends, Ezra Lee. Ezra is our head of design. He did a lot of the UX UI for our application. And he also graduated from Harvard's Graduate School of Design. Finally, my good friend and MBA classmate, Alex Durant. Alex Durant has been instrumental in spearheading our sales and marketing efforts as we go into pre-launch. And we met at Darden and we both connected on this space, funnily enough. So part of our due diligence process was to find out what was working historically in the lending industry and what wasn't. And one of the big things we found was Muhammad Yunus and his microfinance model. So I'm gonna ask the audience, if you know who Muhammad Yunus is, please raise your hand. Okay, a couple of you. So for those of you who don't know, Muhammad Yunus was a social entrepreneur from Bangladesh. Are you not too? Yeah, so he was a social entrepreneur from Bangladesh. He won the Nobel Peace Prize for his work with the underbanked and underserved communities in Bangladesh. And he essentially figured out a way to give credit to individuals who traditionally didn't have access to traditional lines of credit. One of the key pieces that Muhammad Yunus figured out was that if you don't squeeze people with interest rates and you set up some kind of social accountability model, that you can actually get pretty low default rates. And that's what we ended up finding too with the Grameen Bank, which was the invention of Muhammad Yunus and his low default rates. So it was a model that we were very much interested in and that we wanted to potentially use for our application. Okay. So the second thing we wanted to do was we wanted to find our product market fit. And what that essentially meant was we wanted to figure out where the market was lending happening so far that we could essentially find some kind of data points to further our platform and how we're gonna go about the process. And we were actually able to find that within social media. So there was a social media site that we had found where informal lending was happening between borrowers and lenders. And essentially what we came to find out was not only was it happening, but they kept coming back too. A lot of the same lenders, a lot of the same borrowers kept coming back to the same site. We wanted to figure out why. So because we are a very data-focused team, we web scraped the entire site. There were $37 million worth of loans completed in a 7-year time frame with a 92% repayment rate. So once we found that out, we were like, okay, we need to figure out what else is going on behind the scenes, so let's talk to them. We interviewed the borrowers, the lenders, and the one big insight that we got was that these two groups had finally found a ZOPA, so a zone of possible agreements that work for both sides. And that eventually became our product, where we took the hybrid model of Muhammad Yunus and some of the insights he had gotten from the Grameen Bank and his group lending model, as well as an AI-based approach off of the data that we were able to scrape from our potential borrowers to target repayment rates that were still profitable and secure for our lenders. And I'm going to hand it off to Alex.
Thank you, Maximilian. So we're going to be talking about the business model and how we make money. Since we are an intermediary, we make our money twofold, a little bit from the borrower, also from the lender. From the borrower, we're going to charge a small origination fee, and that's going to help us cover our cost of transmission for the money. And then for the lender, we charge them 2 fees, a transaction for helping them find the match with the borrower. And we're going to charge a subscription fee. We feel like our value add is if they're on the platform and they're engaged and they're deploying loans, with the risk that we help mitigate for them with the borrowers, they're going to be making enough money so that the subscription fees can pay themselves and they're not even noticing that they're paying the fees. Next slide. Lastly, we are in a competitive space. Every business has some form of competition. So we looked at twofold. We looked at community engagement and loan amounts distributed. So as you can see, Lending Club was kind of the first peer-to-peer lending space. I think they started 2010. They're publicly traded, but they lend out large amounts of money more for credit consolidation, for automotive, and I think they're getting into the mortgage space, which is not what we're getting into. And then the 3 on the bottom is Pigeon Loans, and Solo Funds, and us. Pigeon Loans, they don't have much community engagement. The way that they operate is more friends and family. So instead of friends and family asking each other informally, they look through Pigeon Loans to create that documentation and transparency to see what people have to owe each other. But we also found that like lower community engagement increases the risk of default. And then we are more aligned with in the space with Solo Funds. However, we found earlier this year in March that Solo Funds got sued by the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau for being misleading on how they charge their borrowers, like in terms of loans. They don't call it interest or origination fees, they call them tips and donations. So that's something that we're mindful of whenever we're entering into the market, what the regulations are, and how to make sure we're as transparent as possible. And then here you can see kind of our app in action, what we've designed, when you guys download the app, what you're able to see. So this is from a borrower's perspective. They can request how much they need on the first slide. Then they move on to the interest rates. They get to see the interest rate, and then the interest rate transfers into the final amount that they would owe. And then we give them autonomy on picking their repayment date. So it gives them flexibility to have enough funds to cover the loan, but then also it's not long enough that they don't forget that the loan exists. And then we give them also an opportunity to add photos and videos of themselves so that when the lender sees them, they can see the face, and then we give them an opportunity to create that engagement with each other to again build that community. And then our ask is we would like feedback. We would like to know if you were a borrower or a lender, what would be your hesitation on doing the app? And if you can scan the QR code, check out our website and sign up as a lender or borrower if you'd like to do so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Give him a hand. So to reiterate, he's saying you can use that QR code to go to his website right now, and you don't have to sign up right now, right? It's just to see and experience it real quick. So we're encouraging you to hop on the website in order to get feedback. And their question is, what would cause you to hesitate as either a borrower or a lender? He's looking for kind of both sides. If you could be a potential borrower or if you could be a potential lender, what might give you pause in going this direction? So more or less they are looking for feedback. So we can start back here.
Hi, okay, good. Hello. As a lender, my question would be, I've never heard of you guys, and why should I trust you at all? And it's almost like I might lend you some money, but I want to have you put money in escrow just in case it doesn't pan out. And I also would like to know what, like Warren Buffett likes to talk about having a big moat, but with you guys, it looks like at most a puddle. So what is it that might keep others out of this business that you're in? Because it seems like just about anybody could get in this business.
I agree on that last statement. Just about anyone could get in this business. I think the better answer is everyone is pretty much in this business. So anyone who has a checking account or a bank, uses a bank in this room, you are already in the lending process itself, because that's how banks work. They take your deposits and they lend them out with interest. One of the big factors that we've seen, at least from the lender side and the product market fit that we found, was that there are a lot of individuals right now who want to diversify their investment portfolios. And peer-to-peer lending is a growing space where individuals can finally start doing that, where you yourself can finally charge maybe not the same amount of interest as some of the banks, but you're able to get in on some of the lending action that the banks historically have been privy to.
Over here, right in front of you. Raise your hand. He had his hand up, sorry, second.
As a borrower, I've had difficulties with lenders who use the credit system as a weapon against you. How do you help protect the borrowers against people who might be lending this in a less than ethical way?
That is an amazing question. So one of the things that we noticed in our research as well is the over-reliance on the credit score. So one of the first things that I had in mind was, I don't want to use that. I want to figure out a new way, a better way to essentially underwrite and lend our users. So that was the main basis behind a lot of our research. and really trying to figure out how could we get around having to utilize the credit score for a lot of these borrowers who are either in college, who are first starting out in life, who potentially don't have good credit, and how could we make this a process where we not only give them autonomy, but protect them from predatory loans? And it's one of the big features that we actually implemented into the platform itself, the offer system. So what that means is the offer feature has become something that we're very proud of for Solvaria. But essentially how it works is when a lender sees a borrower that they're interested in, they can send them an offer. And depending on how many offers the borrower gets, the borrower actually has the choice between which lenders they want to partner with for their loan experience. Additionally, after a transaction is done on our platform, both the borrower and the lender get to review and rate each other. So borrowers actually get to see lenders who other borrowers have worked with and get to see some of the feedback that they received from that borrower themselves. We do that to ensure that we keep accountability and transparency front-facing on the site itself.
Hey, how's it going? Really. Thank you. Interesting idea. If I'm reading the data, right? So as a lender, I have maybe a 90-ish some percent chance of making the return on the investment at the interest rate that I offer. Is that correct?
Correct.
So if I'm going to compare this to my other investment options, what information do you give to the investors to make me feel more comfortable about the likelihood that I'm going to get my money back, as opposed to maybe a lower interest rate but more certain investment somewhere else?
Great question. So it goes into two of our features. So the first being our community and activity page. So within our community activity page, and this is one of the things that we found really helpful when scraping social media sites, is we wanted to have a better idea of how many loans are being completed, what's happening on the platform in real time, and that's what we show to our users. So we have an entire page as a feature that essentially shows when a borrower completed a loan, paid back a loan, didn't pay back a loan, because those defaults will inevitably happen. But essentially to maintain transparency on our site and to show lenders through the best testimonial that we could find, people are actually coming to the site, they are paying back their loans, and they are completing their loans to ensure that the lenders are also being protected on the same side. We also have a lender dashboard that has a couple of key metrics. One of them is your average default rate. Another one of them is how much interest you've made on a monthly basis. And the final one is loan plus interest, or principal plus interest, the total amount of loans that you facilitate on the platform. We do that because we keep track of all of that information, and we also portray that to the rest of the platform. One of the big incentivizing factors for us is to ensure that not only are our borrowers and lenders able to facilitate the loan process, but they're also on what we call a control loop. So we have 5 tiers within MingleMoney itself, where the borrowers and the lenders both start off in the first tier. They prove themselves on the platform, and depending on how they do, we'll promote you via our leaderboards to the 2nd, 3rd, 4th tier with rewards and incentives tailored to both sides to ensure that we can have our users on a journey with a reward feature at the end and then back into the next control loop.
Hello, awesome presentation. Just a couple thoughts. One, which this gentleman was alluding to, is, can I understand a little more of my return on investment versus like a checking account or bank account type thing? The second thought is, could I buy into a pool of borrowers, like college athletes or something like this, to spread out my risk a little more? You'd lose the peer-to-peer. You probably thought of that one. And then the third is, how do you communicate with the borrower once you've lent money? Do you get their cell phone? Do they Venmo you? You probably get paid out through the platforms. You're just wondering what that interaction actually looks like.
Yeah, I think the last question for the interaction, so it's kind of like Airbnb in the sense that we create a space like a chat room for you guys to talk to and communicate with to create that community. I think that was the main takeaway of that question. So yeah, we do create an opportunity for both the borrowers and the lenders to chat, to create that relationship. To feel if they build that relationship, then the more likelihood that the loan will get completed. So I think, yeah, we do want to make sure that your return on investment or your investment for that year beats the S&P. And we have ways like Maximilian said to track it. At the end of the year, you can see how much you've lent out and then how much has been returned and how much you've made on that principal and investment. So we do have that.
Hi, good morning. I was curious if you had any data.
Okay.
How's this? Good morning. When I go to the homepage, right, I'm asked to sign up as a borrower or a lender. As a lender, I think it would be interesting to understand who the target market is right off the bat. So is this a micro loan for $100? Is this several $1,000s? Is it big money? I don't think it's big money, but what really is the scope of this? And also, maybe some quick data points. Right? How much money's flowing through? How many unique transactions? Those types of things. How much are we actually transacting? To get a scale or understanding of the size of the population and the community.
So for the first part, microloans, it'd be less than $1,000. But we do, like Maximilian said, with the tier system, you're not going to start with $1,000 credit limit. We'll start you at 100 to 150. And then as you prove yourself to be creditworthy, then we will slowly but surely increase that amount. And as far as your other question, I think right now we haven't launched the app yet. So we don't have that data, but our competitors do have that data, and they lend out a significant amount of volume per day. We're trying to get both borrowers and lenders. So then obviously our customers will be different for each. Our typical lender we would think someone who has discretionary income and can afford to help out and take a risk. And for a borrower, we have like the whole set. It can be a small business wanting to start out, or it can be people who are stable but low income and they just need quick access to cash. Maybe their car broke down, but they need to pay a mechanic, but they don't have that money. It could also be like a medical bill. So that's what we're seeing.
We only have time for one more, but we're gonna have you repeat your contact information since I don't know if you want to check the computer while I'm doing it.
Good morning, guys. One, I think it's really, really cool. I've never heard of this concept. Initially, when seeing the idea of adding photos and videos, I think that's awesome. Community so important to so many aspects. And then I also think, do you guys have processes in place to help track and mitigate potential implicit and explicit biases that might come along with having photos and videos?
Can you repeat how do we mitigate the risk of implicit biases and?
Yeah, like I'm queer. I look queer coded, right? So with my photo on, how do we, predatory loans weren't just because of credit score, right? They also had to do with people's identities. Do you have ways to mitigate potential issues with that?
That's a great question, and it's really one of the core aspects of our platform. Is one of our big value propositions is that we match and connect our borrowers and lenders, right? So one of the initial thought processes that we had when we were first thinking through this idea is what if we do encounter bias when people upload their pictures and videos? What if individuals from disproportionately underbanked communities or zip codes are being discriminated against as a result? And the answer that we came up with is, why don't we just match who we think is going to best get along based on not only their profiles, but also their interests. So we want to make sure that the borrowers and lenders actually have a starting point to connect on, because we found in our product market fit and our research that if we are able to build that personalized connection between the two parties, the repayment rates are actually higher. So that was one of the big incentivizing factors for us to build that.
All right, thank you guys so much. Give them a hand. I literally have 4 mics in my hand right now, so we'll figure out which one works. But there's their contact information. I know that there were more comments and questions. They're also going to be here till 10. They'll be here till 10 as well, so you can catch them in the back after. All right, so I'm going to take this down in a minute so it's not distracting, but I'm going to go ahead and introduce the next speaker. So Greg Samuels is our crash and learn, and I always like to clarify, it's crash and learn, not crash and burn. So lessons that are actually learned through that process. So a little bit of background on Greg. He grew up in Richmond and graduated from Virginia Tech with, so don't pay them, I mean, it is, for the BS in computer science, and moved back to Richmond after. He spent his entire career working with Greater Richmond area companies, starting with his first job. His first IT job was Circuit City. You guys remember Circuit City? So that's where he got his start. He is the former CIO of Interbake Foods. He was there for over 10 years and led the RVA Tech, which is Richmond's Tech Council. Led their CIO forum for 4 years. He's also president of the Richmond Chapter of Entrepreneurs Organization and also their member products director for the East Coast. He is now the CEO of Solvaria, which is a 50-person strategic technology leadership and database services firm, which was he founded it in 1997. Greg met his lovely wife, Jerry, in high school. So they've been married for 31 years and they have 2 children. And fun fact, he enjoys kayak bass fishing. And I also wanted to just let you guys know that Greg has a podcast called Occupational Hazards. And it's so relevant, which is why I'm telling you. He talks to business owners and leaders about ideas that they've invested time, money, and energy into that didn't work. So that's like what this is. So it's on Spotify, it's called Occupational Hazards. I'll say it again at the end. He didn't ask me to promote this. I wanted to once I found out about it. So please help me welcome Greg Samuels.
Thank you. All right, you can hear me, good. Good morning. I just want to say thank you to Hope and for hosting something like this. As you know, she says we're going to bring a seasoned CEO. So that's old, that's jaded, right? I had hair just like you guys when I started a business, so thank you. I appreciate that. I've been able to learn things every time I come and speak at one of these engagements. I just learned ZOPA. Zone of possible agreement. I love that. Okay. I don't know what Angel, we have an argument. So we got to find a zone of possible agreement. So I'll start a little bit I was asked to speak about my entrepreneurial journey. I did start as a programmer in Circuit City stores. We had 400 people in information technology and I was one of them. And for any business who is in the consumer electronics business, why you have 400 people in information technology, I had no idea. I was sitting in a business meeting, I'm fresh out of school, I'm wide-eyed and bushy-tailed just like you guys, and I'm sitting in a meeting at Circuit City, and they're like, we're gonna replace our point of sale system, and I'm in this 20-person room, and somebody goes, okay, well, I'm part of this team, we're gonna write the operating system. And this team, we're gonna build the hardware. And I'm 22 years old, right out of college, and I've raised my hand. And I said, why are we building our own hardware? Why are we writing our own operating system? There's plenty of good ones out there. All heads looked at me like I had a third eye. That was when I knew that working in a large corporation was probably not me. I knew that, there was a lot more going on here at play than I even knew at 22 years old. So continued on, I went into consulting. I joined a consulting firm. I was employee number 8 at a local consulting firm, and we were doing application development. My thought was, and I was talking to somebody before at coffee, and they're like, well, I'm at this firm and I'm hoping I can rise up in the ranks, and then we have an exit and I make a lot of money. I thought the same way. It's like, okay, my aspiration is rise up in the ranks. And so we grew from 8 to over 110 employees. The company sells, I'm one of the senior managers there. The company sells, all the partners walk off with their bags of money, and I'm left here working for someone else. And I'm like, wait a minute, where was my windfall out of this? And again, item number 2, why I didn't belong in a corporation. So I wound up figuring out the hard way that my best path was to go to work for myself. Now I did anybody heard of Girl Scout cookies? Yes. So Interbake Foods owns 1/3 of the Girl Scout cookie market. I was their chief information officer. So my IT shop was 8. And what I learned being in food industry was that you could have a great year, you could have a terrible year, you're going to grow or shrink by 1 or 2%. So it's a very stable industry. You're at mercy to the commodities, but I learned a lot about IT. What did I learn? I learned that the fact that being a CIO, I'm the guy who sets the strategy, and then I have a great team that's going to execute on that strategy. And being the CIO, what I also learned is that once you set the strategy and you have a good team that's running the strategy, you don't have a lot to do. So why was that important? Well, what it taught me was that the CIO job had these peaks and valleys, and at its peaks, you're really busy, you're setting the strategy, et cetera. And at the valleys, you have this team and you're just making sure they're executing. Well, when I left Interbake Foods, code before I got fired, when I left Interbake Foods, I went into business doing fractional CIO work. I ran IT for other organizations, and I did it on a part-time basis. And I turned this into a boutique consulting business. And what I found is I could go into an organization, I could spend 4, 6, 7 hours a week, 8 hours a week, consulting to a company, helping them run IT, being accountable for IT, getting all of the vendors in line. And I could actually do this on a part-time basis, and I could do this with a lot of different companies. So I didn't innovate the fractional CIO space, but I found a niche in Richmond, and there were a lot of companies who could use our help. So what I was doing was taking advantage of the peak, keeping busy, setting the strategy, et cetera. And then during the valley, the company didn't have to pay for me. So that's kind of how the business got started. I met a gentleman who was running a database services practice, and he was getting on in years, not so much older than I am now. He was getting on in years, and he said, well, why don't you come and work for my firm? And I said, why would I do that? And he said, well, he goes, I think I could sell you a piece of this business over the next 5 to 10 years, and eventually you would own the business and I could retire. That was in 2011. I ran the company really hard. We were growing, we were doing really well. And then in 2012, at the end of it, we had the best year ever, ran it super hard. And I had what I would define as my oh shit moment, which is he approached me and he said, okay, you're running this company too hard. I don't have the energy to do this. You need to either buy all of it or none of it. So again, I couldn't fathom the idea of purchasing this entire company all at once. And so I reached out to a friend of mine who was an angel investor, a venture capitalist. He came in and looked at all the numbers. Now, when we talk about crash and learn and we talk about lessons learned, I consulted with a lot of different people. And my options, actually, after talking with him, I'm like, look, you could be the money guy. I'll run the business. We can be partners. He said the greatest thing to me. He looked at the numbers and he said, Greg, you can do this on your own. He goes, as much as I would love to own a part of this business. I think it's extremely lucrative. It's something you can do. You can do this on your own. And I'm like, how? He goes, well, let's talk to the SBA. So I went to the SBA. I got an 8A loan, and I actually did not know at the time that someone like me with a book of business, track record of working in the industry, some experience, that I could get, I could get north of $1.5 million from the government. Now, that was my foray into actually buying the business and owning the business. Since then, I bought a second business 2 years ago. Now, one thing that I would say for people who are either in business for themselves, thinking about being in business for themselves, one thing that I learned the extremely hard way was about banking relationships. One thing that stuck out, I had been, so I went to Virginia Tech, and the only bank on campus was Dominion Bank. It had an ATM. So I was like, okay, well, if I'm gonna go party, I need to go have a bank account with Dominion. So I started my banking relationship with Dominion. As you know, that got bought and sold, Wachovia, eventually it became Wells Fargo. So my personal business was with Wells Fargo. The business itself, when I bought it, we did business with Wells Fargo. So all of my money was in Wells Fargo. This little event happened called COVID, and it was time for the business to apply for their PPP loans. And Wells Fargo did a great job of providing me absolutely nothing, zero support. They failed. All the big banks were like, oh, we're backed up. We can't process your loan. So I talked to a friend of mine and I said, well, what other banking relationships do you have? And they turned me into a local Richmond bank called Ce2 Bank, eventually Primus. And I built a beautiful relationship with them. They helped me with my PPP loan, and I became to split my money with them. So one of the things I learned early, and I tell people now, is that learn your banks, learn your community banks, learn your local lenders, learn your corporate banks. Establish a banking relationship with more than one company. So I thought that was something I had never ever thought about. Somebody asked me earlier, I was like, what's the greatest lesson I've learned as an entrepreneur? Seasoned, right? Seasoned. I'd say one of the greatest lessons I've learned is making sure that you hire the right team and putting your faith into people that aren't going to come through to you, being optimistic that they are going to change. That was probably my biggest mistake. I've had individuals who come onto this organization who, has anyone read, there's a book called You're Not Who I Hired? Anyone read that book? It's a great book. Read it. You're Not Who I Hired. You have a good interview, great rapport. You're like, okay, this person checks out. They check all the boxes. They have the expertise, experience. And then they come in day one and they're an entirely different person. You're like, who are you? Like, what are you doing? And so what had happened over the years was we bring on someone, and I was overly optimistic on they are going to work out, right? My internal optimism was kicking in. What I have learned over the years is there's really two things that need to happen. Number one, somebody has to have the GWCs. Is anyone an EOS or traction? Jacob knows what GWCs are. GWCs are get it, want it, capacity to do it. If you're an entrepreneur and you are a small business owner and you have not read either EOS, Traction EOS, or Vern Harnish has one called Scaling Up, both of those are frameworks for doing business. So in EOS, they talk about GWCs. Do they get it? Do they want it? Do they have the capacity to do it? So first, evaluating somebody's GWCs, understanding that the person has the motivation, they have the capacity, and they get your business. The second piece, which is something that we have recently adopted at Solvaria, which is talking about, are they the right fit for your organization? We use something called Culture Index. Has anyone heard of Culture Index? There you go. Okay, so Culture Index, it's two questions. It's about 92+% accurate in reading people on, really it's two questions for 6 dots. The first 4 dots talk about, are they team players? Are they more I related? Are they more command and control? Are they I or we? Second is, are they more introverted or extroverted? The third is, what's their pace? Do they like to go fast? Do they like to go slow? And then the last one is, are they low on the details or are they high on the details? So they're the person you want to finish, follow up, and follow through. What I've learned is that we have jobs and we have job maps, and the job maps talk about, well, we need an extrovert. We need somebody who can absolutely go fast, but not necessarily need to focus on the details. My salespeople are like that. They like to go fast. They're extroverted. They like to go, but they don't need to follow. They don't need to have all the detail. They don't need to be necessarily detail oriented. Angel will tell you, I'm extremely low on the details. Like, I can come up with a great idea, but I'm not the guy who want to implement it. Like, I would rather drink battery acid than stare at a spreadsheet for 4 hours. So I'm not that guy. I'm the visionary. I'm the one who's there. And then there's somebody who runs who was talking about chief of staff? John, chief of staff. Okay. Chief of staff is what EOS calls an integrator role, right? You're the one that makes the trains run on time. Every company needs a visionary and every company needs an integrator. So, in adopting EOS, I learned very quickly as a small business, you have no choice but to be the visionary and the integrator. As you grow as a company, though, what you definitely need is you need to define those two roles. The person who's low on the details and the person who's low on finishing, following up, and following through is not the person you want to be your integrator. They're not the person you want to make the trains run on time. So back to putting my faith in people, I'm either hiring someone who is really low on the details and I'm putting them in a very detail-oriented job, that's bad, or I'm hiring someone who is your introvert, finish, follow up, follow through person, and I'm putting them in a job where I want them to be low on the details and I want them to be out in the public. So having that mismatch in the job creates a lot of stress. Stress on me, stress on that employee, stress on my faith that this person can actually deliver what they need to deliver on. So by aligning where they fit in the organization with the job you're asking them to fit, really unlocks something for my company. What it really did is it made sure that when I hired somebody from day one, I knew the job that they were in. I could look at the tea leaves, I could look at those dots, I could look at the motivation that they have for fulfilling this job, and I knew that would make them happy. We've hired somebody under CI, and the first thing that she said to me about 3 weeks later, she goes, I feel like I am in my ideal job. I mean, as a business owner, that's what you live for. You live for someone coming in and saying, I'm in my ideal job. Not, it's stressing me out, I'm really doing things I'm not comfortable with, etc. So people have probably heard the hire slow, fire fast. You ever hear that? Hire slow, fire fast. So it's not completely true. I suffered for many years of hire slow, fire even slow. Like I'd let them, all right, they're going to change, they're going to do better, let's give them a little time. So I suffered from that hire slow, fire slow. What Gary Vee says, hire fast, fire fast, promote faster. So you hire people in, you figure out who's gonna make it the long haul in your company, and you start to promote them, you give them more responsibilities, you start to get them in. If they're not working, guess what? It's time to go. And those areas, and just thinking about that on the people side, when people ask me business, I mean, there's been plenty of other opportunities for me to crash, almost running out of money when I had business with my largest customer. I'm like, largest customer, this is great. Well, they're net 90 days and I'm paying my consultants every 30 days. That's a math problem you've got to solve. So those all come and go, and how you persevere through those. But entrepreneurism it's a full contact sport. Somebody told me it's like whack-a-mole, right? You solve one problem and then you've got another problem. You solve one problem, you got another problem. So having the right team with you, and combine that with having the right discipline to run that team, and making sure that we now subscribe to the hire fast, fire fast, promote faster. So that's probably the biggest learn that I would take away is around the people side of things. So there you go. Thank you. Questions? All right, we have one from the wide-eyed entrepreneurs down here. Alex. Zopa. Let's find the Zopa.
So with the SBA loan, from my understanding, there's a personal guarantee.
Absolutely.
How'd you, one, overcome that? And then two, there's also a lot of covenants and agreements.
You don't overcome it. You don't overcome it. You either, so you're either in it or you're not. So for me, what is personal guarantee? So yes, I cashed in a large chunk of my retirement and I put my house on the market. You know, something's really funny about entrepreneurs is I was in a group called the Virginia Council of CEOs, and I'm in a roundtable. One of the CEOs who was hired by another company, he's like, I got this problem. He goes, it's really, I have problems with the owner and this, he goes, I think I'm gonna quit and get another job. And I was floored. I looked, what? I'm like, me quitting and getting another job means my house is gone. I repay that bank loan and I'm in trouble. So there is no getting around it. The covenants around, you know, the loan, I would say the only thing that really bit me, which I did not know, is anyone buy a house and you buy it kind of cheap and then the market goes up and you sell that house and you make a big windfall, you're like, oh, this is great. So I was in my second home. I bought early into the neighborhood, bought it at a really good price, really good interest rates. And so about 8 years ago, went to move, right? And market was crazy, market was great. So I sold the house and we were gonna make about $150,000 on the house. So I was gonna put that into renovating this new house that I bought. Well, the SBA is like, nope, all the profits from the sale of that house, because the house was part of that guarantee, all the profits have to roll into the loan. So what I wound up having to do was it just paid my loan down, but then I was left with no renovation budget. So then I had to come out of pocket for my renovation. That's probably, you know, when you're thinking about these 8A loans and you think about these loans, that's probably the biggest mistake I made. I since then converted that loan out of the SBA to a traditional bank loan, which we then paid off, but there's zero covenants. I mean, again, community banks are willing, you know, I bought a second business 2 years ago, and I know it's a long answer to your question. I bought a second business 2 years ago, and what I did not know what I didn't know then is when I went and bought I used a community bank for that loan and that financial agreement, and they were wonderful to deal with. So the money I put down to buy that business, et cetera, was not insignificant, but it certainly was a lower risk loan. But when I approached the community bank, we have an opportunity to buy a third business. When I approached that same bank again, they're like, you can do this for no money. Like, we'll do the next one, we'll finance the whole deal. And as you establish banking relationships, again, Wells is never going to do that. As you establish banking relationships with your community banks and your regional banks, what you find is success on your first deal leads to even more flexibility on your second deal, more on your third. This is not going to be your only business. I guarantee it, right? You guys are smart. You're gonna build this. This is not going to be your only business. And so being able to move that forward and knowing I've established a good relationship here, I made good on this loan, what's next for me?
Have you thought about buying with a seller's note? Meaning the owner gives you a loan and then you just give cash flow in the future?
Yeah, so back up, the loan I bought, the seller financed 20% of the original deal. So there was a subordinate note, so there was a primary note, a subordinate note. What the SBA also tells you is that if you make good on the primary note for 2 years, you can buy the seller's note out, which is what I did. So 2 years making payments to the bank, did not owe the seller anything yet, because the subordinate note comes after 3 years. And then I wound up absorbing that note into my main note and moving forward. So, does that help?
Yeah.
Well, now I'm gonna go on your site and I'm just gonna get a microloan for $1.5 million and buy the business, right? We can do it, so. Okay, good. Question? Hi.
Hi, I'm a new entrepreneur and I'm more of a visionary type and having a hard time with like the follow through and discipline. What kind of words of wisdom and maybe even practical skills would you have to offer?
Having what really unlocked our company's success. So again, I bought that business in 2012 and I ran it as is for a little while, right? In 2016, we did two things. We rebranded because the old name was terrible. I won't even share it with you. We rebranded. The other thing is we adopted EOS. So we adopted, we read Traction. I gave a copy of Traction to my entire management team. and we wound up implementing the entrepreneurial operating system. It is running a business for dummies. Now, why did I do that? Well, I did that really to understand the pieces, parts that are at play in my business. The second reason is I knew we had the ability to unlock our potential. And I will say with 100% confidence, EOS helped us unlock our potential. We doubled revenue that first year, and after implementing the EOS. Because what it did is it laid out for us, we ran our business every quarter, we lay out quarterly goals. We meet every Monday to talk about what goals does each department, what rocks, they call them rocks, what rocks we each have to accomplish. We read the numbers, we know where we're going, and we can set and readjust our course. Traction also lets you develop a 3-year vision, 10-year plan. And I would say the nice thing about having a 3-year vision is that everybody on your management team is hearing the same thing. Now, as a new entrepreneur, you are the visionary, you are the integrator. You can read that and take it for what it is, but there were plenty of days where I have to take off that big idea hat and I have to roll up my sleeves and I have to get to work. Does that help? Yeah.
As a chief of staff, I want to thank you for the free advertising. Chiefs of staff are really important, and I think that a lot of entrepreneurs appreciate that, but some are still trying to figure out how to fit them into their team or when they're ready to, when's the right time to invest in having one. So just raising awareness of the criticality of that role, I appreciate it.
Well, I think the magic mistake that entrepreneurs make is, look, I'm an IT consultant, right? I grew up as an IT consultant. One, I didn't know the first thing about being a CEO. So what's the first thing that I did? First thing I did was I joined a peer group of other CEOs. Now I'm part of the Entrepreneurs Organization. There's 18,000 entrepreneurs worldwide. I have my people, right? I'm with other entrepreneurs. So they make mistakes and they've learned from them. I go to them with a challenge or issue or opportunity. And they're like, oh, I had that 6 years ago. Let me share that experience with you. So it really short-circuited or shortcut my mistake making and say, well, before I do that, let's try that and let's think about it. So that, that's one thing. But the mistake that entrepreneurs make is the business that they're in. Well, one, they're the smartest person in the room, right? They know everything, right? And I was the CIO. So one of our gigs was with an anesthesia practice. Anyone here in healthcare? Medical, like an actual MD, medical provider? Okay, no. Okay. So you work with medical providers now. The challenge, I was the fractional CIO for an anesthesia practice. The problem with anesthesiologists is that they think they know everything about everything, not just anesthesia. So when I came in and said, okay, here's IT, here's our strategy, here's what we need to do, they're like, yeah, but did you think about X, Y, and Z? Just because they read something on the plane, in Fortune magazine about how, business intelligence is going to change the world. So thinking that you know everything, and the chief of staff is an excellent example, which is what makes me a good entrepreneur, what makes me a good visionary, makes me a crappy integrator. So recognizing that while you know a lot and you know a lot about your business, you don't know a lot. You don't know everything about everything. So I'd say that's probably the death knell of people I've seen like, oh yeah, we got that. We got that. IT, we've got it. Finance, we've got it. I do all the books. The former owner of the business would disappear for 3 days so he could manually do invoicing and manually do payroll. And so when I bought the business, and I said, okay, well, how do we do payroll? He goes, okay, well, all the consultants send me Excel spreadsheets, and then I manually type it into QuickBooks, and then I manually write all the checks, and then I manually file all the taxes, and I do all. And I said, there's applications like Harvest for timekeeping where I can send all the time right into QuickBooks. Why don't we do that? There's automation we can put in. And it wasn't because he knew everything, just that's the way he did it. Yeah.
I have time for one more question.
You mentioned that you've implemented the EOS model. I'd like to hear what your 3-year vision and 10-year plan is.
So in 2016, we said 10 million in 10 years. That was our revenue, right? Revenue, gross profit, or top line sales. We hit the 5,000 list. We were on 85,000 3 or 4 times. We brought in a gentleman. Anybody heard of Bert Harnish? See how we're scaling up. Vern Harnish, Vern came and spoke to the Entrepreneurs Organization. And I said to him, Vern, we've made the Inc. 5000 our fourth time. And so our top line number was awesome. I said, my net profit was probably the worst of the 4 years we made the Inc. list. And he said, well, of course. He goes, well, top line is vanity, bottom line is sanity. So we went and revisited our 10-year. We purposely did not apply for the Inc. 5000s the next year. And we improved our net profit position by 35, 40%. The company grew 35%, and we improved our net profit position by 35%. And we all walked away patting ourselves on the back. And a few people who weren't kind of in the know were like, I'm sorry, you didn't make the list for the fifth year. I'm like, we didn't apply for it because we focused internally. We focused on net profit. So that's a little bit about, so we recast our 10-year. Our 10-year is based around number of clients and number of markets. So we talked about, we're based in Richmond, Virginia. We have clients all over the world. We actually, my staff gave me this map of the world, and we actually put pins on all the clients all over the world where we have operations. We manage sites in Japan, we manage sites in Australia, New Zealand, England, blah, blah, blah. So our goal was to be, our 3-year goal was to be in three major markets and grow north of 100 clients. And I'd say in the world, in the continuum of where we are in our vision, we're at about 70-ish clients, and we're in 2 major markets right now. So we are on the way to where we are. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. I'd be curious what your 3 uniques are. I know that's another part of the EOS attraction.
Yeah, so, when you talk about database management, you talk about database services and a managed service. If anybody's, every application system has a database behind the scenes, right? And one can take a very vanilla approach to managing data platforms for customers. One of our uniques is we recognize every client is unique, as is every employee. Like there's not a cookie cutter approach. We have a framework that we want to do, but it's very much a bespoke service for each of these clients because they're all different. They're all using different systems. So I'd say that's one of our 3 uniques. I said our second unique is the fact that we treat your business like it is our business. Now that sounds very trite and very on the top. The evidence I have that supports that is that when one of our large clients says, we're having a problem with X, let's call our database team. And they called my staff. They're not saying, let's call Solvaria, let's call another company. They're like, you're our database team, let's call it. So I think that's one of our uniques as well. And then I think the last thing for us is this notion of EO has four main values. One of them is called Together We Grow. And I think we subscribe to Together We Grow because we recognize that while there are individual players in our organization, there's no greater power than the power of the team working together. And we're trying extremely hard to not only foster the fact that rising tide lifts all ships. As we're working together, we find that to be incredibly powerful. We also spend a good amount of time identifying people who aren't living those cultures and those values. And we're urging them that this is probably not the long-term.
Thank you so much, Greg. I appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
And then if anyone, you'll be here till 10?
Yeah.
All right, so Greg will be in the back as well. And then here's his contact information if you want to keep in touch. And as we wind down, we have announcements. We have 2 different, we're first going to start with the hosting organizations. But if your company is hiring or if you have events that you'd like to share about for the room to know that's what you're going to have the opportunity to share. But we can start with CIC and SBDC. Okay, so we'll start with CIC. Or do you want to? Okay, yeah. So we'll start with CIC. Sorry, guys. Community Investment Collaborative to just share about it.
Hi there. So I don't have any particular announcements for you today, but I did want to introduce myself. For those of you who knew Hannah Deal, she was at the checkout table. When she worked with CIC, I am now in her position as operations coordinator. And CIC works with folks to help them actualize their business ideas. And in particular, we help by working with folks who are underserved in our community. And a little bit about me, before I worked at CIC, I actually worked at the mall at rock, paper, scissors. I worked with small businesses in Virginia for about 10 years. And it's lovely to see some familiar faces of folks that would come into the shop. But if you have any questions about CIC, what we do, or something specific, please feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to connect you with the correct team member who can get you an answer, or get you started on something that you might be working on. So thank you all for having me.
Are there CIC grads in here, Virginia? I know a handful.
Awesome. We do have the entrepreneur workshop. These folks have graduated from 16-week course that helps people work through their business ideas, get fundamentals, and then once they've graduated the class, they're ready to either take their next step or go to business.
Awesome, thank you. All right, and then we have Ariel with SBDC.
Hello, I'm Ariel. I'm the Assistant Director at the Central Virginia Small Business Development Center. We cover Charlottesville, Albemarle, and then 8 surrounding counties. We offer free of charge business advising for businesses at every stage, whether you're just have a business idea to you're growing, scaling, going international, hiring. We have a team of experts that have different specialties in the food industry, people to help you with your record keeping. If you're going after a loan, we have financial help to build your loan package. We are tied to our Virginia state network. So we have programs like the Innovation Commercialization Assistance Program to help you really understand if your idea is worth commercializing. And then we have the International Business Development Program. So if you're exporting or curious about exporting, we have experts that can help you with that, and then craft beverage as well. One opportunity that we have coming up is called Pitch Preview, and that's where we work with the Charlottesville Angel Network, or CAN, and it is for early stage innovative entrepreneurs that are considering angel investing, and it's a free opportunity to help you practice your pitch. So you practice your pitch in front of accredited angel investors, and they give you actual feedback. And so the next time that we're doing that is on August 1st. And the application deadline is July 25th. And you can find information on that on our website, cbsbdc.org, or ask me about more information. But don't hesitate to reach out if you have any needs or questions about your business. Hi, I'm Amanda Laskowski with CBIC, the Charlottesville Business Innovation Council, and we exist to convene and reconvene the entrepreneurial and tech and business innovation ecosystem here in Charlottesville. We are at one of our third Tuesdays events right now. We also have a second Tuesdays event in the evening called Tech on Tap over at Chickadee by the Glass Building. And that is an open-ended event, lots of networking, making connections. And it's also available for sponsorship. So if you want to support the work we do and also maybe celebrate something for your business, like a launch or a milestone, talk to me about sponsorship for Tech on Tap. The next couple of months are open. And other events that we have coming up include, looking far ahead to the fall, our tech tour, where we bring high school and middle school age local kids to robotics labs, medical research facilities, tech companies, and let them sort of envision their career opportunities and future. So if you know of a business who would like to give a tour, please come talk to me. And stay tuned, because we are spinning up a couple other sort of one-off quarterly events on special topics that we're going to be calling Tech Night Takeovers. And we'll keep you apprised. If you signed up for this event via Eventbrite, or at least if you gave us your information at check-in, we should have you subscribe to our email newsletter. It comes out every Sunday. It's got lots of juicy tidbits for local Virginia ecosystem.
Thank you, ladies. So very thriving entrepreneurial ecosystem here in Charlottesville, but now you have the opportunity to share if your company is hiring, or if there are any events that you'd like them to know about, kind of like these ladies have shared. All right, go ahead, and you can just project. So a drone range in orange, that sounds pretty cool. And you can get details on the latest CBIC newsletter, and since that's in August, it'll probably be on the next one as well, I'm guessing. Probably, hopefully. Thank you, and then you can see John in the back too if you have a question. Okay.
We're having a dance party this Saturday, a conscious dance party, so Pilates, fun run, meditation, and gratitude practice. So, average wager, so you can find that on TomTomFoundation.org. I'm also managing their TomTom Festival Conference, and we are gathering ideas. So if you have any that you would like to contribute with any ideas or any connections, or speakers, and sponsors, all of that, reach out to me, and I would love to hear some of your ideas for collaborative.
So TomTom Foundation-based dance, which you just heard about. Anybody else? All right, well, that concludes this portion. I did want to thank the sponsoring organizations again, CSC, CBIC, SBDC, Watermark Design, Baton Institute, UVA, and then absolutely thank you to Code-Based Co-working for hosting this event and allowing us to utilize the space. If you would like a tour of Code-Based Co-working, it's these two floors, the one we're on and the one below. Rob Archer is in the back. He can be the starting point, and then whether he gives a tour or Kendra or somebody else can give you a tour of the space. I know I co-work there. I know a number of other people do as well. And we will be back the third Tuesday of August. And stay tuned to the CBIC newsletter for speakers and whatnot, but bring your friends, sign up on Eventbrite as Amanda said, and we will look forward to seeing you back here third Tuesday of August. So have a great rest of your day.